Hey guys, it's Jesse. In this video, we're going to be checking out the latest flagship 7x7 from MoYu, the AoFu WRM. So we recently received this sample of the new AoFu WRM. Unfortunately, there is a stress mark on this corner here, but this is not what you should expect. This one is just unfortunate, but the cube still works fine. We can still show you what this cube's all about. So first of all, it's very, very small. I'm gonna do a couple size comparisons. Here is an MGC 7x7. And take a look at that. That is pretty considerably smaller. So the MGC is 68 millimeters and this one is 64.5. So that's a pretty big difference. And it is really, really noticeable in your hands. It feels much more like a 6x6. Honestly, more like a 5x5. It's actually really close to a 5x5 size. So just another quick size comparison. Here is the die in 5x5 and you can see it's really only a couple millimeters smaller. So the form factor is definitely pretty new, I think, for a flagship cube. There have been mini 7x7s, but I think this is probably the smallest like big release for a 7x7. One more small thing to note, the logo here is blue instead of black. I don't mind that at all. I think it looks pretty good. But let's go ahead and jump right into the turning here. We'll test the outer layers first. Okay, those feel pretty good. I actually really like these second layer turns. These actually feel the fastest, I think. And the third layer turns are also pretty good. Overall, I think the cube has a pretty classic feel. It really does remind me of an older MoYu 7x7. I'd say the turning feel is kind of bumpy. It's not really clicky, but it's also not smooth. It really just does remind me of like an older AoFu. I can tell that the cube is magnetic, but they don't really influence the turn that much. They're definitely there if you feel for them, but I don't really see them like influencing the actual turning that much. The cube's also not terribly fast. I'll compare it to the MGC and the Spark here. So the MGC, definitely really, really fast cube. So I'll do a sexy move on each. So yeah, so there you go. Not bad. The speed is pretty good. It's actually very, very controllable. We'll do the same thing with the Spark here. Yeah, so I think in terms of speed, this one actually pretty much sits in the middle of these two. I think this one, the Spark, is the slowest and the MGC is definitely the fastest. I don't really mind the speed of this that much. I don't really think it should be much faster. The only problem is it feels like there's very low wiggle room here. I like that with the MGC, it has a very, very high base level of speed, which gives you a lot of room to add a good amount of lube before it slows down too much. I think the trade-off with the MGC though, with the faster speed, is that it is just kind of generally more loose. The cube kind of pops a lot. I'm curious to see like kind of how stable this one is. I'm gonna try and kind of force a bad lockup on here and just see how messed up we can get this cube to be. Oh, we already had a pop. Okay, yeah, that's pretty bad. I feel like this entire group of pieces here is like about to explode out. Let's try and not let that happen. Oh gosh. All right, now I'm just making a mess. So I ended up having like 8 pieces pop out. We'll put that back together in a second. Let's see if we can force a pretty bad lockup on here and just kind of see what happens. All right. Is it just gonna cut through? Oh, there we go. Okay. So you can still force lockups, nothing really surprising there, but overall it was actually feeling like it was corner cutting pretty well. Yeah, I think this cube's tolerance for taking kind of hard corner cuts and tricky turns is already feeling better than the MGC, which is really good. So I just got my first pop just while doing normal turns. I guess with some pieces already out, we can just take a look at the mechanism. So here's what the two edge wings look like. They interlock very, very tightly together. So you pretty much have to take out both of these pieces kind of as a group. You can't just take out one of them. So we can see that same kind of design carried over to all of these centers. There's just lots of little bits sticking out to ideally prevent popping. The corners are still pretty simple, but I think this inner center design is pretty cool. You can see just like how small the actual stock is that the visible piece is attached to. There's just a whole lot of room under here for all the other pieces to move around. So it's pretty cool. You can see how this part from this like wing center kind of hooks under the corner center. There's a lot of material sticking out here that's gonna prevent this piece from popping, but Funny enough, it was this piece that popped. This cube definitely has some tight tolerances and some places where the pieces get pretty thin. I hope that there isn't an issue with pieces breaking, because I know that can definitely happen when the cubes get smaller like this. So we'll say this for pretty much every cube, but especially on cube like a 7x7, don't try and force the pieces in. If it's not wanting to go in, just take a few edges out and slide that piece in and then put the edges back in. That's gonna be the safest way to ensure that none of your pieces ever break. So my first impressions of this cube are really positive. I really like the way it feels, and I actually am already a big fan of the form factor. I think that is the one thing that's probably gonna hold some people back from jumping in and giving this cube a try. If they are longtime 7x7 solvers, they're probably much more used to a bigger form factor and will be more reluctant to switch to this. But I'm already pretty confident that I'm going to prefer this size over the bigger size in solves. So yeah, I think I actually kind of want to get one of these and start practicing, because I really like this form factor, and it's also quite light. So I think I could do a lot longer sessions on this than on an MGC. As usual though, the MGC still completely beats this cube in terms of price. This cube is $50 and the MGC is $36. That's still cheaper than the Spark though. The Spark M is $60. So I would say just right off the bat, of these three, probably still gonna lean towards the MGC as being the best of the three. Then this, then the Spark. There are certain aspects of the way that the AoFu WRM performs that I definitely prefer over the MGC, but the MGC is still like $15 cheaper. I think this AoFu WRM in particular has a lot of potential for the next generation of cubers, younger cubers who are much newer to big cube events. I think that a lot of those people are gonna gravitate to a smaller, lighter cube, which is where this is gonna come in. I think if they were able to get the price of this cube down a little closer to the MGC, maybe like $40 or something, this would be so much easier to recommend. So I would still recommend the MGC if you're like pretty new and just want a 7x7 or just haven't kept up with hardware, want a new 7x7. The MGC is just overall a very safe bet. I think the main deciding factor is really just the size. Do you think you want a smaller 7x7? If so, definitely get the AoFu WRM because it is the best small 7x7. And it's hard to say right off the bat, but I really do think that the performance of this cube is pretty much on par with the MGC, if not a little better in some ways. So yeah, overall, I think this is a really solid release from MoYu. If you guys want to check it out, the link will of course be down in the description. Let us know in the comments if you want to get this cube, if you've gotten it, what you think about it. Also, we're getting more plushies for this whole set, so we need name ideas. So far, we've been sticking to a theme of just like taking a name and kind of swapping around some of the letters. So, you know, like Benmijin, Jothanan, Tithamy, Greragri, stuff like that. Give us your suggestions. All right, that's all for this one. See ya.